It's live. Right, good morning everybody and welcome to this morning's Personnel Committee for Nottinghamshire County Council. Sorry for the slightly late start, a few minutes, one or two IT issues, and in fact we've got one member of the committee is still endeavouring to make a connection, but hopefully he'll be joining us shortly. My name's Councillor Neil Clark. I'm Chairman of the Personnel Committee, and this is being recorded. It's been held remotely with councillors in their own homes, and it's been broadcast live and is being recorded so it can be watched at future dates as well. So apart from myself, we will have Councillor Keith Walker is just joining us in a moment or so. Apart from him, we have with us Councillor Butler, Councillor Dobson, Councillor Henry, Councillor Longdon, Councillor Place, Councillor Smith, Councillor Gordon Wheeler and Councillor Jonathan Wheeler and Councillor Woodhead. Also present, we have various officers which support us in the work of the committee. We have the Services Director for Customers, Governance and Employees, Marjorie Toward. We have the Head of Human Resources, Jill Elder. We have the Team Manager for Health and Safety, John Nyland. We have the Senior Business Partner, Helen Richardson, and Senior Business Partner, Lindsay Woolmore. Also pleased to welcome, there are three, I believe, trade union representatives with us today. Karen Eddy, James Minto and Adrian Morgan from Unison. And finally, last but not least, we have Sarah Ashton, who is the clerk to the committee. So hopefully that's the introductions done. Without further ado, move straight on to the agenda and item 1, the minutes of the last meeting held on 16th of September. Do you all agree those are a true and correct record? Can I sign those, please? Yeah, okay, thanks very much. Perhaps I should just mention as well, I will have, I don't mind whether you raise your hands electronically or wave at me on the screen. Hopefully I will see your hand, whichever method you're able to use. I appreciate that some people might be on a mobile device and may not have the electronic raise hand facility. Okay, item 2, apologies for absence, please, Sarah.
Okay, we've received apologies for our absence from Councillor Stuart Wallace and Councillor Richard Butler will be substituting for him at this meeting. Okay,
thank you very much indeed. Item 3, do we have any declarations of interest from either members or officers, firstly, that are disclosable pecuniary interests? I'll take silence as no. And secondly, again, members or officers, do you have any disclosable private interests? And I'll take silence as no. So thank you very much for that. So if we move on to the substantive items on the agenda now, and item 4, I welcome John Nyland, who is the Manager for Health and Safety. Welcome him to present the report. Hopefully, John, I haven't seen you yet, but hopefully you are there. John.
Good morning, Councillor Clark. Good morning, everybody. Thank you. And I'll present the 6-monthly update for health and safety. Traditionally, we would cover broader health and safety issues, but we're going to take the lead of the Health and Safety Executive and follow what is obviously our key safety concern at this point in time, which is dealing with COVID-19. So this really focuses purely on the actions around combating COVID-19. It built on a report which was originally given to this committee on the 8th of July and adds some detail. And just in context, this was written as we emerged from the last lockdown and we were actually looking to prepare and initially reoccupy council buildings. The support mechanism from health and safety, whilst generally across all services, has been embedded within the Risk and Safety and Emergency Management Board and groups. So we've been supporting those groups, and they've been happening on an increased frequency, in some cases on a weekly basis. The focus of much of our work, the initial phases were on the home working arrangements, but as I was describing earlier, the context of this was written as we moved into the reoccupation phase, and much of the effort was going into the COVID secure arrangements for buildings, premises, and certainly working with property and the broader property reoccupation groups. And we achieved that position by having the buildings COVID secure, correctly signed and enabled. And on point 7, we needed to establish that what we had in place was actually working. So we were looking at also human behaviour aspects of health and safety. So we knew physically we had the control measures in place, but actually were they being applied? And it was right and proper that we put a mechanism in there. That continues, we're rolling that out. And as also expected by our management system, we cannot not carry out any monitoring of health and safety at all. I mean, operations are continuing in certain areas, and we have been doing work outside of the scope of COVID-19. But generally, we want to build a picture of how secure and the effectiveness of the COVID secure operations within buildings, and generally adapting those to make them more workable for staff and visitors. One of the emerging risks as we headed towards winter, and this was, as I say, written a month or so ago, were the issues around ventilation and heating. There's been an incredible amount of research gone into the ventilation requirements, and it's certainly one of the points high on the health and safety executive's agenda, and right and proper that we try and maintain that natural balance of ventilation. But also, as the buildings become colder, whilst we may have less staff, we still have a legal minimum of 16 degrees, which we should aspire to maintain. So there were tensions there. We've managed to put out local level guidance, and in fact that was in advance of national guidance from heating and ventilation experts. And I think we're bridging the gap. I think the bigger area of concern there is within the school environment, clearly because they're occupied and for probably longer periods sat static in a classroom. They feel the effects in a greater way. So that's something we're working with the schools and schools maintenance teams to make sure continues. So buildings in general, we have a position where we've reached a COVID secure position. We're monitoring via signing in sheets, via QR codes. And also there's the ability for staff to contact us directly with concerns. Moving on to PPE, personal protective equipment, and particularly that for the higher risk areas. And a lot of the team's effort has gone into the ability to provide face fit testing. Now this is required where a higher level of mask is deemed necessary. So for special educational needs, and it doesn't only relate to schools and children, but also in adult social care. There are certain medical procedures which will release aerosol into the air. So supporting staff in the working environment, staff cleaning the environment afterwards have to be properly fitted with a higher level of protection. We have that capability which has been built from nothing at the start of COVID. We didn't have any capability, and we worked with an external body, and we've now trained a capability of 3 teams of 2, and we've now to date achieved somewhere in the region of 250, probably nearing on 300 now since the report's been written, face fit tests, and we likely think we can develop and respond within 24 hours This hasn't only been in county. We're working with external providers and also in support of the CCGs and the City Council as well. So it's been a joint effort with partners. Personal protective equipment. There was a storage facility which moved from County Hall. The local Resilient Forum drops, which were, and many of you may have seen when you visited for the initial council meeting back in May, stacked in the corridors. That posed some safety concerns and practicalities. That's now been moved to a central storage site. We've done a lot of work externally with the police, with the fire service, and looked at the threats to the storage of that building, both from a security angle, from an environmental flood angle, and fire. And we're sure we've got assurance now that is secure. It's not only our protective equipment there, but that of the city and the LRF. As we move back into lockdown, we'd already started work looking at the prolonged home working arrangements, and it was not that actually the last lockdown saw many people return, as was the message, was to stay at home. So it's been quite a while in development, but we've released as of yesterday the new interactive home working arrangements form. Now this pulls together a number of other documents. It shortens actually the process. It's quite a lengthy document in itself to complete, but what it does do is say it pulls together a number of other documents, and what it enables us to do, we'll be able to draw information around home working, but you will also speed the raising of concerns. It will automatically email IT, health and safety, the IG team, HR, of any employee concerns. Now I know of yesterday, the first day, I'd had a report facilities had had 500 alerts on one particular issue around PAT testing dates, which we have a plan in hand. But it was pleasing to see actually at that point on the first day that it's being engaged with and used. And the aim is to make a safer but also a more comfortable home working experience. And again, as time goes on, we'll develop the form, we'll tweak the form further, and we'll be able to run reports on what are the key issues that home workers are raising. So really, that's kind of the general overview to date. I could say a lot more about PPE, but I think that's the general overview. The second part is around lessons learned, and this by some means is a review, but also it was an internal debrief from the safety team, recognising that probably any formal debrief could be some time coming, and we wanted to capture what we'd learnt in the initial stages. Secondly, for those of you who've looked at the actual report attachment, it's written in a particular way, and it's written in a way around the requirements of the 45,001 standard. So as well as a document identifying the lessons learned, we're using this as evidence for our move towards 45,001 management standard, and which will feed into what would traditionally be called a management review. What I'd like to do is actually turn to that report now, the attachment, but I think given the length of the report, it's probably worthy of me just going through the key points in the summary and then taking any questions on the broader report. So overall, I think this period has certainly highlighted to everybody the need for health and safety, and the importance of good support, and what it certainly has done is raise the profile of risk assessment. I don't think anybody is going to come through the other side of COVID now without having either heard the term risk assessment or have completed one, and certainly, you know, recognising the importance of risk controls applied out of those assessments. A lot of the advice we provided, we found we've been far more operationally focused at a tactical level more than a strategic level. We were, in the sense of the advice we gave, more around management system advice before, a lot focused again on building the management systems 18,000 and 45,001. But this crisis in reality has taken us back to the grassroots of how do we wear PPE, what's the correct type, basic inspections as I previously mentioned within buildings around behaviours. So that's something which is will cause us thought for the future in how we shape the work we do going forwards. There's certainly a greater emphasis again on protecting health and safety. I don't think that really should be any surprise. A lot of the operations which exposed ourselves to more true safety risks, things like work at heights, work with machinery, aren't necessarily happening. But the safety aspect and certainly those aspects centred around COVID have been one of our key areas of support that we give. Managers in the early stages weren't necessarily engaging early enough with ourselves. I think that was a general theme across our team, and I think that was probably due to the pace of change of working, and shortly we found ourselves embedded within working groups, and haven't really looked back from there. We've been certainly busy, and it's been quite full on. We remain aware of HSE regulatory requirements. The HSE were relatively quiet at the start in terms of information coming out. A lot of the advice we were following on, the majority was around either Public Health England, or government guidance, or the new government regulation for COVID. This has taken some keeping pace with, I think, not only within health and safety, but other areas. We're constantly looking and working with public health and communicating those changes. So a mechanism for identifying that during a crisis like this is important. And then latterly, the HSE have started producing more advice, which we're kind of balancing one against the other. It was interesting to note, and in the earlier part of the report, the tensions sometimes between guidance, which is centred around health and clinical settings, and trying to apply that into corporate or school or non-clinical settings, and pick the path through what is the true position we should be adopting. But again, we've overcome those areas. That was demonstrated around the area of aerosol generating processes, and some differences of approach between health and ourselves. But we've now have a consistent approach, and there's some national guidance on that. Aligned to the new guidance, the obvious point of risk assessments need constant revision and review. I think we're putting out information regularly, both on the intranet and through meetings, to encourage people to update the risk assessments. I think it was also important to note that we shouldn't lose focus for our existing operational assessments. So it was really amending your existing assessment rather than writing a new one from the start for COVID. So we didn't lose sight of the existing requirements and existing control measures. Training, many different approaches have had to be taken to training. Traditionally, health and safety is quite hands-on, quite face-to-face. We're obviously using Teams. We've developed alongside HR and learning and development various packages and resources, and they're proving quite successful. But I think that also it's important to confirm at a local level, where practical skills are learnt online and remotely, that they can actually be applied and people truly understand those when it comes down to the practicalities. Capabilities of contracted services to deliver should be regularly checked. By this I'm referring again back to face-fit testing, and with the capability had been outsourced, but we pulled that back in-house, and as they trained a team in-house to deliver, so we had control over the ability to meet the demand. And then finally, the last 2 points, the long-term health effects of well-being are generally recognised falling out of this. I think we won't truly know what those effects are for some time. But again, the home working assessment tool was designed particularly to start to address and ease some of the problems and ease them in a timely and quick way, with the automatic email alerts and being for managers then to be able, the receiving managers to be able to respond quickly to the staff raising the issue. And the broader issue of networking, again, immensely broadened our scope of the organisations and services we work with outside of the authority, and at times keeping pace with who was actually doing what or who we needed to contact. It's important that there's a clear map of known points of contact certainly within the management system, for reporting such things as accidents, incidents, and passing on key safety information. So they were the general points. There are more, again, we could add since this report's written, but I think I'll leave it at that point and just take any questions generally from the first part or the second attachment, if I may.
Great, lovely. Thank you very much indeed for that. And certainly, I think we can all appreciate that health and safety and you and your staff have all been thrown very much into the deep end at the beginning of this crisis, and into a major panic. So well done to everybody that's been involved, and I know, I'm sure that everybody would agree that our thanks need to be extended to everybody that has pulled together, especially at the very beginning with all this sourcing of PPE, etc., and that sort of panic. And as you say, the reception area was a bit of a jungle of boxes at the beginning of the crisis, but as you reported, it's been regularized into a proper storage facility now. Yeah, the ventilation and air conditioning is an interesting one, because that's part of the aircraft syndrome, isn't it? In confined spaces with ventilation and air conditioning. So it's interesting to see what the effect of that may or may not be, and the importance of ventilation. And you touched on working from home, and I think that's probably an aspect. I suppose I'll formulate it in a sort of a question to you, John. The working at home has presumably extended or widened your scope in terms of having to look at health and safety at work, because while somebody is working from home, technically they are at their workplace. And so I don't know, can you just give us a bit of a flavour as to how you have been able to support people working from home in the sense of health and safety?
Yes, certainly. I mean, this is by no means just been a sole effort of health and safety. Others have been involved, certainly IT and HR very much in this as well. So, the credit isn't only for ourselves. As with the development of the form, it's been a joint effort. But the areas of initial concern when people moved to home were the traditional: are you setting up your laptop and PC in the correct manner, and is there a suitable facility, and is it the right height? So we're thinking about the short-term ergonomic aspects initially, and that advice was quite easily to provide because most people were used to doing DSE assessments. I think as this extended, and this is probably the more difficult aspect, we're starting to get into the areas of social isolation. And I know a lot of good work's been done across the board, and certainly outside of health and safety, keeping people engaged, not only engaged via work team calls, but also other calls to engage people in a social manner. And then we've looked at the environment. We've tried to put out as much information on the safety of the environment, fire safety, electrical safety, the abilities for staff to be able to have the equipment they need, and supported by IT, even down to chairs, risers, multiple screens, and so on, but in a controlled way. I think that out of that, the issues around PAT testing have been raised. I think that's number one comment we get back. My items coming out of PAT test date now. We're working with Kelbarry, who are the providers of PAT testing, and looking at schedules and what is the true requirement. And in some cases, actually, it isn't on a yearly basis. The necessity can be in another year's time. Trailing cables, I think, is the other number one point we get from comments. There's a trip hazard from a trailing cable. We're looking to provide a toolkit on basic advice, either tape down or reroute your cabling, and so on. So there's some very basic information, but I think more broadly, the work now from this point needs to be looking at the longer term effects.
Great, lovely. Thanks for that. I'm pleased to say that Councillor Walker joined us at the beginning of Mr. Nyland's presentation. So welcome, Keith. Overcome your connection problems. So can I now? I've got Councillor Jonathan Wheeler and then Councillor Dobson. Councillor Wheeler.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, John, for the presentation. I've had to do about never 40 risk assessments in my business as a result of COVID, so I can only imagine how many you've had to do in the current circumstances, so I share that pain. One point I just want to go over is, in the report, in the Appendix 1, it mentions about managers who have introduced new risks, such as properly open fire doors. I just want to understand, have those risks been implemented before it's been signed off, so to speak, by yourself and your team? And if that is the case, what action has been taken against said managers? Because just using that one example, the fire service saw that, then we'd be in a whole heap of trouble. A former colleague of mine, about 10 years ago, as a store manager, got fired on the spot for fire service coming in and seeing a fire door propped open, and we got a 6-figure fine as a business. So I just want to kind of understand what we're doing to re-educate these managers. I'm sure they've gone through all the various training and everything else, but so it sounds more of a conduct issue more than anything else.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Wheeler. The issues. I mean, it was fairly isolated concern over the fire doors, and in fact, it was identified to us by the corporate fire team, the ARCS fire team, which feeds in corporately to property. On a number of their compliance inspections, they'd seen this. So we did a follow-up. It's been more a matter of correcting the thinking of managers on site and education than any hard-handed approach. I think they were trying to do the right thing, and in some cases the doors propped back were on automatic releases anyway. But it was just getting that general message out, which has been put out on the intranet at an earlier stage, and it's something we'll look for. We have this form, as I've mentioned, the inspection form 115, and when we do a compliance visit, we will look for such matters and then talk to the local managers. So I think it's one of education that we're looking for at this point in time. But of course, if there were persistent offenders, then we would obviously take a stronger action.
Yeah, that's great, John. Thanks. Yeah, obviously, I understand about the education. First of all, it's more of if it was a repeat issue or they've gone through training, then suddenly did it straight afterwards, which I know that could happen. So thanks for that.
Thank you very much. Councillor Dobson.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, John, for your presentation, and thank you to Jill Elder and Marge and the whole team, because you are a team. If I can turn everybody to page 12, planning 2.3, 3/4 of the way down, the paragraph that says, we noted that managers in the main focused on government and public health. Can I just say well done to our lead in public health, Jonathan? You've been absolutely brilliant. And for me as a member, and I think
TV superstar, you mean? Is
yes, absolutely. But I don't mind, because he's brilliant. Everybody rates him highly, and that's really good. But what I would like to say to you, John, is that my concern is if the managers are listening to government, I don't mind them listening to Jonathan, our team here at County, but I do get a bit wound up if they're not listening to you. Because the trouble is, with the greatest will in the world, health and safety is not everybody's bag, is it? To be absolutely honest, I'm sorry, but it isn't. But me as a member, and I think all the members that sit on personnel would like in the near future, because I don't think this COVID-19 is going to disappear tomorrow. And I think it would be quite good if we haven't got it. You're probably going to tell me we've already got one, Councillor Dobson, but I think we could do as members a briefing sheet or list that will tell us and help us to help our villagers and people we represent from your point of view. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Yep, interesting point, John.
Thank you, Councillor Dobson. No, I don't think we've got a briefing sheet for the community, but we could certainly work with you on looking at how we can best achieve that. And I think the point I was just making on that around managers in the main focusing on public health and government guidance. There's a lot of focus on the new guidance, but we were just looking in some cases around the requirements for PPE under existing health and safety legislation, and I think everything centres around, you know, the PPE regs. So such things as the requirements for storage and the requirements for training had to be borne in mind as well as just what the guidance stated within the government's released documents. So there was certainly more legal requirement behind what the government guidance on the face of it was saying.
Right. Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Can I just say thank you to John, but equally say why I'm asking for us to be informed is not for us to be able to go and tell the butcher, the baker, the candlestick maker what to do, but at least be able to say to the people we represent in businesses in particular, right, this is who you need to get hold of, this is what you need to do, and this is the email that you need to go on. I'm sorry, John, I'm going to give you loads more emails coming through, but that's what I'd really like, and in future I think probably it might be worth looking at. Yes. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Lovely. I can't see anybody else indicating at the moment. So the recommendations, 3 recommendations, and I wanted very much to acknowledge the work, and so just to reiterate thanks to everybody for pulling together, John, and I'm sure, as Councillor Dobson has said, it is a big team effort, so thank you to all the team for coming together and trying to make everybody as safe as we possibly can be, is basically the theme. So we have the 3 recommendations there before us. Probably the easiest way is to ask, is there anybody, rather than asking in favour, because I can't see everybody all at once, is there anybody who is not in favour or wishes to abstain? I can't see anybody, so if I can take it that everybody is in favour of those 3 recommendations. Great. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you,
thank you, John. You're welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting, or if you have, I'm sure you've got important health and safety work that you wish to continue. So thank you very much indeed for your report anyway. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, item 5 is the progress report on the graduate development programme. So can I ask Jill Elder, please? Jill, would you like to present the report?
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, members and trade union colleagues. This report is to give an update on the graduate development programme, and I'm pleased to report that it is a developing and continuing good news story for the County Council. Members may recall that back in March 2018, the decision was taken to leave the national scheme and to develop a scheme of our own. And we're now at 3rd cohort and it is developed and grown over time. So at paragraphs 4, 5 and 6, there is information around the career paths that the previous cohorts have taken. And I'm happy to say that in January, rather than just hearing me go on about how rich they've found the experience, we're inviting a graduate trainee from each of the cohorts to come and present to you at committee about their experiences and about what their aspirations are and how they felt to be a graduate trainee and part of the programme. So hopefully you will find that interesting, and it will also be an opportunity for Adrian, who's our lead officer in respect of the graduate development programme, to come along and explain just the level of work that's involved in recruiting graduate trainees, but also about maintaining the support for them throughout their time with us. This has been, as for many other things, a very interesting year in how we've delivered the programme. So we had to extend the contracts of the existing cohort to enable them to complete their qualifications. We also pushed back the date of recruitment for this year's cohort, but we did consider it really important that we maintained presence, because we've heard about the situation about qualifications, young people going into further education, and indeed the possible situation for people graduating and increased youth unemployment. So alongside this in our apprenticeship offer, which Lindsay will talk about further in a later report, we thought it really important that we continued with the programme for this year. We had to deliver it virtually, which brought its own challenges, as you will have experienced in committee meetings. So undertaking an assessment centre and indeed interviews virtually was challenging, but I have to say we had really positive feedback from the people who were invited to interview. This year we had a 54% increase in the number of applicants. So we had over 400, just approaching 450 applicants to the scheme, which is a significant growth. And you will see at the table at the top of page 19, the districts where those applicants came from, and at paragraph 10, the applicants broken down by the local universities that they attended. The quality of the people coming forward for interview this year was exceptional, I have to say, and I'm really excited about the prospect of these people coming into our organisation and developing their careers with us. But the other thing that was equally important for us was for everybody who came forward, be they unsuccessful at shortlisting, unsuccessful at the assessment centre, or indeed at interview stage, that they had the most positive experience of contact with the County Council, because who knows where their future careers may also develop with us, not now as part of the programme, but once they've gone off and gained experiences in other employments. So again, we think it really important that we gather that evidence of how positively people viewed their entire interaction with the County Council. Because we had a much bigger cohort of applicants, you will see in paragraph 11 that created in many respects wider diversity of the candidates. And that's something that we have focused, and this committee has received a number of reports in respect of our support for Black workers, our whole equalities agenda, but things like disability confidence, Stonewall and the Race at Work Charter are really important, because our applicants are telling us, in seeing that we are signatories to those options and promoting the involvement in those areas has attracted candidates, because they feel if we are publicly stating our commitments, this is an organisation that they will feel comfortable and confident applying and working in, which is very pleasing to learn. So we've got a number of people who've gained 5 out of the 6 of the first cohort gained employment with the county council. 1 went off or associated businesses. 1 returned to London to work in his particular intention. And we are looking now at career opportunities for the second cohort so that there is a plan. They don't start looking outside the organisation. We're talking to them through peer and mentor support as to where they might want to develop, because as you may recall, they have 4 6-month placements over the duration of their 2-year traineeship. And over that time, certainly for the final placement, we're looking for them to develop their particular interests. And again, I'm pleased to say for the cohort who will start in January, we have a number of bids from service areas who have either previously experienced the benefit of having a graduate trainee or have been sold on the benefits by other services when they see that the work that these people can undertake in developing, and have in many cases our existing cohorts been at the centre of a number of our responses to the COVID pandemic. So the work that they undertake is absolutely genuine. It is of significant value to the county council, and that's why I think it's important that you hear firsthand from them at next committee about the nature of their experiences in what have been very challenging circumstances. So if I move therefore to the recommendations, we're seeking your agreement to the continuation of the in-house graduate scheme for 2021. And also we had a cohort of 4, but we have secured potentially additional funding subject to your agreement for an additional 2 places to accommodate the exceptional quality of the candidates that were interviewed in this year. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Jill. And as you highlighted, I think the massive increase in interest year by year does show in itself the success of the scheme. So I think everybody should be very much appreciated, and also the fact that we are operating the scheme ourselves rather than using the national programme ensures that we can keep it focused and tailored to Nottinghamshire. So it is all very much to be welcomed, and also I think in the recommendation it is to be welcomed that because of that additional interest and applications that we are able to look to add another 2 to the scheme, and I think that is all good news, because it's good for ultimately the people of Nottinghamshire to have all these well-trained graduates and people who are aware of what's going on in Nottinghamshire and will be able to contribute to the provision of service delivery in the future. So that is all good news. So I have a number of speakers already. So far I've got Councillor Gordon Wheeler, Councillor Place and Councillor Longden. So Councillor Wheeler first, please.
Thank you, Neil. Jill, thank you very much for the presentation, and clearly it's a huge amount of work has gone into the programme, and that shows from the report. Firstly, I may have missed this in the report, but Jill, can we have a breakdown of the successful appointed candidates by category of BAME and LGBT, please, unless I've missed that in the report?
Jill.
There is a breakdown of the candidates, but not how they've been progressed through each stage. So we can certainly bring that along. Stage, yeah.
We don't have that figure, do we?
Not to hand. No, sorry, Councillor Wheeler.
So you can bring that back to us.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful. No, it follows on from the work that's already been done by this committee and obviously by yourself and your team, Jill. So that completes the picture. And secondly, I know we can't necessarily keep the recruitment open only to those living in Nottinghamshire, but it is disappointing to see that only actually 1 person in Nottinghamshire has been appointed to Nottingham Trent. We've got 3 from Nottingham City, 1 from outside. and one from Sheffield. That is disappointing because our own people, in fact, are not being appointed. Those who live in Nottinghamshire and go to universities are not being appointed. That is disappointing, and I just but surprised by only one successful applicant.
I think that's probably called merit, Councillor Wheeler, I would imagine.
I somewhat suspected you say that. She surprised me then, Neil. But you know where I'm coming from, I hope. But certainly, as I said, it is disappointing. Only one person from Nottinghamshire has actually been appointed. I just made the point. I know we can't do anything about it.
Well, I think I'm just going to ask Jill to clarify that.
Okay, I'm going to clarify 2 points for you, Councillor Wheeler, because I didn't give you the fullest of answers to your first question either. The table at paragraph 11 shows the fall at the position at assessment centre. The reason we couldn't give you the interview was we were still interviewing in October when the report was drafted. So we have that information, and I will bring it to the next committee, and I can send that to you prior to next committee if that would be of interest. The point about where the graduates come from and where they live, got to bear in mind the point where they were applying, many of them would have still been living close to their universities. So they may distribute into the county subsequently, but traditionally, if you go to Trent or you go to Nottingham University, you either live within the immediacy of the city in student accommodation, or you live in the conurbation. But it is a requirement for anyone applying that they are resident of Nottinghamshire or will be resident of Nottinghamshire. But obviously we don't know, and candidates wait to see whether they've been successful or not before they develop where they might live subsequently. So there are criteria to make sure that they're local graduates, but we have. So I think previously we've spoken about the lack of success of applicants from the north of the county, and we have tried to develop, and I think we have included Sheffield and Sheffield Hallam in the cohort because that's where a number of young people from north of the county tended to seek their further education rather than coming south to Nottingham.
Right. Yeah. Does that? I think that answers your queries, Councillor Wheeler.
Thank you, Chairman. It does.
Thank you very much indeed. So I've now got Councillor Place, Councillor Longden, Councillor Dobson, and Councillor Jonathan Wheeler. So Councillor Place.
Can I come back on that for Norfolk County? I'm being a bit parochial. I see only 8 applied again. But what question I'd like to ask is, with us having S80 postcodes and DN11s, do you signpost the people to go to other councils from up this area? Because it's quite hard for people to reach by bus and train and whatever from far north.
We don't signpost to other councils because we're not certain what other council graduate development scheme looks like. Ours is very much about Nottinghamshire. Yeah. There is a national scheme. We tend not to get people contacting us asking about where else they can pursue it. We do have regular contact with schools in the Bassetlaw area to try and develop career options with the county council. I'm not sure how much we can promote the schemes of other places.
That's fine. I just thought I'd ask because it is difficult. It's been it all time, hasn't it?
Yes, it's an ongoing issue.
Yeah. Right, okay, thank you. Councillor Longden.
Thank you, Chair. We've got a question for Jill. Page 17, 4 probably goes on to 5 and 6 on 18. As we had 6 trainees, and I use the word attrition, plus to attrition over the training period. But wouldn't it be advisable, do we think, to future numbers to build in a buffer, say a couple of 1 or 2 extra trainees to take an account of attrition? That is my question.
I think that might. it probably sounds a good idea, but I would have thought that slightly leaves the two in reserve slightly in limbo a bit. But I don't know. Jill, do you have any comments on that?
I don't know whether Councillor Longden's suggesting that we should have a bigger cohort so that if people drop out, I think there's a funding issue there, that we have variable numbers in our cohort depending of the money available in any given year. And it has to be said that of the two who dropped out, one went to work for the Mayor of Liverpool and one went to Greater London. But they were towards the end of the training, and even if they'd moved away, they completed their qualification. And it goes to my earlier point as well. Just because they move away from the programme, or indeed have been unsuccessful in the programme, their experience of Nottinghamshire has been very positive, and it remains the case they may return to us in more senior positions in later years.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Does that answer you, Councillor Longden?
I can live with it, Neil.
I'm very pleased to hear it. Oh, great. Thank you. Thank you very much. I feel I could sleep better tonight now then. Councillor Dobson.
Thank you, Chairman. Well done to, actually, I thought this was Helen's report, but Jill's doing it today. So is Helen off? And if she's all right, I hope she is. And I hope everybody in the department, and whichever department it is, connected with you, Jill, you, Marge, anywhere, I hope everybody's well and on the ball. I've always thought this is an excellent scheme since I joined you in 2013. And yes, it was a national scheme, but you chose as a county to have our own scheme, and I think it's worked out really well. I understand where Gordon's coming from and I understand where John's coming from, but equally I think Jill is absolutely right when she says if they go away and leave us and go to other places, they will possibly come back to Nottinghamshire when there's an advert for a very senior position like a chief executive or a 151 officer or whatever. If they are really committed and really enjoy their time in Nottinghamshire, I think it will be good. My concern, Jill, to you is what we're moving on and we want to continue this, but what about, and I don't know whether it's for you to answer or whether even it's probably the chairman to answer, what about local government reorganisation? Where do our apprentices, where do our graduates, where do they all fit into this if we're going to continue, which I hope we are, but where does where do they fit into local government reorganisation? Say, for instance, we end up with one, well, not just one unitary authority, two, more at the city, or a cohort of different district councils, but working together. How does that affect our graduates?
Well, I think Councillor Dobson.
Sorry, I'm not being funny, Chairman. I think we need to be seriously thinking about this.
Yeah,
if
absolutely.
There's going to be local government reorganisation.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure. I'm pretty confident that there is likely to be reorganisation in some shape or form, and when that happens, this will be just one of many factors that will need to be planned in and taken into account. And I'm confident that a graduate development scheme will wish to be continued in whatever restructuring takes place. And just like any restructuring, every aspect of it will need to be planned, and this will be one of them. We can't foretell at the moment when that might be and in what shape or in what form, but you're absolutely right. Best to plan for it, and when some concrete proposals finally emerge, then that's the time to start planning for the restructuring of all these different aspects of the council. And it is important that all staff and all potential graduates are able to look at that stability for the future to make sure that there is a plan in place to develop everybody's potential, because at the end of the day, that's in the interests of the residents and businesses for which we provide services.
Chairman, well done, and thank you very much indeed for that response. Can I also say, as Sheila has brought up Bassett Law, I think on behalf of your Vice Chairman and myself, I think I'd like to bring up this side of the county, where an awful lot of the children go to Lincoln to do degrees. So it all needs thinking through. And if Lincoln and a lot of the children go up there and do a degree up there, if we can persuade them to go to Nottingham, that would be much better. But it's further. And the Vice Chairman will tell you, and it's very much easier for the Newark children to actually get on a bus and go straight up to Lincoln. Anyway, thank you, Chairman, for that response. I appreciate.
And just a quick response to your comment you just made, I think that just adequately demonstrates there is no barbed wire around Nottinghamshire or any other county.
Jolly good, I'm so pleased.
Okay, let's move on. Jonathan, Councillor Jonathan Wheeler did have his hand up. Seems to, it's back again. Councillor Wheeler.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Sorry, it got lowered. Not me, so I'm not sure from there. Two questions, Chairman. First of all, on the financial comments, Jill. So, obviously, we can cover the learner provision from the apprenticeship levy. So I just want to understand that these amounts that we are proposing to ask finance major contracts for, is that the amount left over from what we can't use out of the apprenticeship levy provision, or is that the full amount that we're actually asking to take out of that pot, so to speak?
Jill.
Sorry. Councillor Wheeler, the graduate trainees are employees and therefore their salary costs. Those aren't the training costs, which will be able to download funds from the levy. They have two qualifications, though. They have an ILM qualification and an apprenticeship qualification. So that comment reflects salary costs.
No, that's great, Jill. Thank you for confirming that. The second point, Chair, is around the what I think a couple of my colleagues have brought up around people from other parts of the county in terms of the application rate and the successful rate. I think this year, bear in mind, we've got a lot of graduates of the last year or 2 years who will not have found jobs due to the what's happened with COVID. They are still obviously graduates, no matter if they graduated last year or 5 or 6 years ago. And actually, you could probably argue those graduates were probably more likely to retain because they've had a year or two of working in temporary jobs, seen that perhaps they don't like that lifestyle of the rate of pay and the short-term nature of it. So when we're actually going out to advertise the next scheme, Chair, what I'd actually ask is that we target ads in the areas of Nottinghamshire, potentially where we've got people, residents now probably living at home with parents or in shared accommodation. So we've got people from my area, West Bridgeford South, and of course, I'm sure with Maureen and Sheila would agree as well in their areas. We're targeting those areas there because I completely understand the point around why we've got high in Nottingham City. That's where most of the students are probably living in those areas. But I do actually think we're going to get, if we go that strategy, a lot more people from the Nottinghamshire area applying, and obviously that will hopefully increase the amount of applicants who go out there and the choice that we have to choose from.
Good idea, Jonathan.
I recorded that, Maureen. Thank you.
Jill.
One of the criteria.
One at a time, please. One at a time.
It might be helpful to know that one of the criteria of the scheme as it stands is it's open to people who graduated within the last 5 years. So I think anything beyond the 5 years makes it less of a graduate trainee scheme. But it does, and certainly I think our most outstanding candidate had 2 years work experience since graduating in the cohort that I was involved in interviews in October. So I think that is accommodated. Councillor Dobson's point about Lincoln University, there is a section of other, and I know there are candidates from Lincoln University included in that other bracket on the table.
That's fine, thank you.
Great, lovely. Right, there are no other speakers, so we have the recommendations before us, and obviously the main thrust of that is the addition of those additional 2 candidates. So again, as previously, it's easier to ask, is there anybody that is actually against those? I have a bit of feedback on the Councillor Dobson, would you mind just muting your, I don't know if the feedback's coming from, yeah, thank you. So could I just ask, is there anybody against those recommendations? No. Anybody who wishes to abstain? Can't see anybody. So I'm going to take it that everybody is in favour, and that's unanimous. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. And as Jill indicated, the sort of related item relates to the apprenticeship update, and I'm pleased to welcome Lindsay Wilmore to present this report. So, Lindsay.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning to everybody. I'm very pleased to sort of say that actually we've had very little disruption to those that have already undertaken apprenticeships due to COVID-19. Our training providers have adapted very, very well and are now delivering remotely. So anybody that is still working can continue their apprenticeship regardless of any, sort of remote working arrangements put into place. Enrolments are also available online, so we can still start new apprenticeships, which is fantastic because they in the past had to be done face to face. So that's really good that that's now been done. We've had a few impacts. We had 4 apprentices that were due to sit their assessments, so they had a break in learning put in place so that we could actually get their assessment done. They are now back and are about to sit their assessment now. We've had also a number of business admin level 2 apprentices that are additional to our staffing establishment that started just prior to the first lockdown, so around sort of January time. We put a lot of additional support in place for those from us and from the training provider. Majority of those were young apprentices, so between 17 and 21, which is fantastic because that was, sort of something that we've been trying to encourage young people into apprenticeships with us. We are looking at putting an extension of contract in place for those if they require it. Some of them have already got jobs lined up for them, so that's fantastic. But it's really important for us to make sure that they have a really valuable experience with us and their apprenticeship is the best that we could possibly offer. So if we do need to put some extension in place for them to support, then that's what we'll do. As you can see from the report, there has been a reduction in the number of starts. That's not all due to COVID. We were anticipating that there would be a bit of a blip this year because the government has actually withdrawn some of the old apprenticeships that came into place from the 1st of August. These include the teaching assistant level 2 and a business admin level 2. They have replaced them with level 3 apprenticeships, but they're a little bit longer and they're more advanced in the tasks that they need to do. So they're not all actually relevant to some of our workforce, and that's obviously hit schools particularly hard, given the fact that they obviously have to pay the salary cost for an apprenticeship, which is now twice as long as a level 2. Very pleased to say that there has been some major changes recently as to how apprenticeships are viewed across the council. More and more teams are looking at future-proofing roles. They're looking at skills required in the teams and the developing needs of those teams. And obviously remembering that apprenticeships must be relevant to the job that they are undertaking. I have included a list of some of our newer apprenticeships in the report for you to have a look at there. The other development is that we've now got apprenticeships available for our relief care workers. According to the government funding rules, they have to be employed on a permanent contract and they have to have a minimum number of hours to undertake an apprenticeship. However, a lot of our care workers work a number of hours over a longer period of time. So as long as we can show that they've worked for us for a minimum of 6 months and evidence the hours that fit with the government funding rules, they can now actually undertake an apprenticeship. The other bit that's really useful news is that we can claim for any adult social care apprenticeships from the Workforce Development Fund. And in May this year, we claimed back £14,000 for those that completed their apprenticeships in 1920 year. The government have put some initiatives out for their work plan, I suppose, for want of a better word. Unfortunately, these don't apply to existing employees, so they are geared towards increasing employment. However, any newly recruited apprentice that we take on up to the end of January we can claim £2,000 for under 25 and £1,500 for over 25. So we are looking at starting a recruitment programme for some additional adult care worker apprenticeships and children's residential worker apprenticeships to take advantage of these. They should hopefully be in place by January. So the public sector target, this is a government figure for all public sector employees of 2.3% of the workforce must be new apprentice starts. It's pleasing to see that this is increasing, although very slowly. We have hit the figure last year at 1.25%. We need to make a report to government every September. That report needs to show regard to the target. So it's important that we, sort of that report outlines the actions that we've taken to ensure that apprenticeships are given due consideration across the authority. The other new area is our levy transfer. So an agreement is in place with Futures for our priority groups, particularly priority young people, vulnerable young people. That has been delayed due to COVID. The agreement has been signed. The sort of process is all in place. Unfortunately, that's for young people that need to work with other employers. And for the majority of those employers, the uptake of new staff for various reasons, obviously, is very slow. So what we're looking at is linking those young people into the other employment programs and other projects that Futures deliver, so that they have a really good rounding of employability skills before they start their apprenticeships. In August, we launched our transfer to local businesses. They can apply through our website, and applications are required to align to the council priorities. We have currently the amount to transfer is 25% of last year's levy, which is a total of 389,000. As you can see by the report, we are making some really good headways in that, and there's appendices attached which gives some of the examples of what we've transferred levy for. The final little bit from me is about the Kickstart scheme. Again, that was in the government initiatives that came out for increasing employment. We're currently exploring options of how to best deliver the Kickstart scheme due to the current restrictions, and what processes we will need to put in place if we are going to offer that in the future. So that really just brings me to the recommendations of agreeing to further work being undertaken to sustain and grow the corporate commitment to apprenticeships, continuing to agree the unspent transfer of the apprenticeship levy, and reports on the apprenticeship and the Kickstart programme in future meetings.
Great, lovely. Thanks very much indeed. That's very interesting. You just mentioned the recommendations, and I just wondered if you could just expand a little bit, because I think the recommendations are fine. But the first one says elected members agree to further work, and I just wondered if you're able to just give a flavour. I'm not asking for a definitive list, but just a flavour as to what that further work might entail, so that we've got an idea of what's involved.
Yeah, I think it's around the the wider programme. So obviously there's some recommendations around the sort of apprenticeships that we might offer in our entry-level apprenticeships. Currently they're at level 2. We need to look at now level 3, given the fact that level 2 has been removed from the government, and a little bit more around the apprenticeships across the authority of, sort of teams being supported to take apprenticeships on within their own areas, and looking at potentially the requirement of taking in unqualified staff that we can actually train up on an apprenticeship. So.
You're muted, Neil.
Sorry, thank you for that. Yes, I knew I'd forget at some stage. Right, Councillor Jonathan Wheeler.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Lindsay, for the report. Apologies, Lindsay, first of all, if these were covered in the 2 minutes I had to drop off the call when my laptop decided to go on strike. Just 2 questions, if I may. First of all is around the financial part. So can you confirm if any money has actually been taken out by HMRC over the last 24 months from our fund at all?
Yes, I can. The funds sit in our account for 2 years, 24 months before they're actually taken out. So we are paying back to HMRC currently. So it started going in May 2017. We started paying back in August 2019. And what they do is they take the full amount per month that is unspent. So we are paying back a monthly amount.
Yeah, no, thanks, Alex. I appreciate the mechanics of it. Just wondering do you have the figures to hand, what we've actually, in effect, handed back to the government if what we haven't spent?
I haven't got a total, but I can tell you that and obviously the reason I haven't got it varies by month, though obviously it's a figure that varies, but that is around 130,000 a month that we are currently losing to HMRC.
Right, that's much more than I thought. So if I come my second question, if it's okay, while I'm got the floor, is that's obviously look at the targets of our apprenticeship is the highest, so to speak, is far less than the government target. What more can we actually take to meet that target? Bear in mind, we are, as you say, giving back a substantial amount, over £1 million a year, based on those figures, which I appreciate can change depending on what's happening, and of course the sheer amount of money that we are also putting into businesses in the area, which, although I support, at the end of the day, the first priority has got to be the council. From the report we got at the last meeting, we know that 58% of our workforce are age 46 or over, so we do actually need to start bringing through a lot more apprentices and graduates, and obviously great work that you're doing. I just want to understand what more help you need from us or resources that we can actually start taking on a lot more apprentices to use that levy and also meet that target of lowering the age profile, so we've got that succession planning in place. Because again, it's a two-way street. We're not here just to criticise your question. It's if you need help from us, I'm sure the chairman will completely agree. That's what we're here for, and what we can support with. But it just seems that we've got a lot of money that we're handing back to government, and don't want to give them any money. We want to spend it here. Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you, Chairman.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I think I think the main issue with that is the fact that obviously the apprenticeship levy only pays for the training, only pays for the apprenticeship. There's still the funding required, as sort of Jill was saying in the graduate report, to pay the salary costs for those apprentices. So we do have a small amount of money that is for the wider apprenticeship programme. As I said, the impact of losing, in particular, the business admin level 2 apprenticeship is quite significant, because that would be our entry level. That would be encouraging those young people to come in. The level 3 apprenticeship is a little bit more advanced, so it's about making sure that the roles that we bring into the authority to meet that apprenticeship standard is acceptable, for one of those reasons. And I think the other thing really is about, sort of, we've seen that the teams are already looking at their existing staff, looking at the qualifications that they might need for the future, and looking to see whether any apprenticeships actually fit. And that's what I think we need to continue to do. We need to look at whether, if we're going out for a vacancy, do we need somebody that is actually skilled up at that level, or could that be an apprenticeship that we could bring in? And I think that's a massive shift for people's thinking, because we also need to balance the needs of the authority in sort of making sure that we can deliver our business as well. And when you think that every apprentice has to take 20% of their time off the job training, that's quite a massive amount of time if you have more than one apprenticeship in a very small team. So that there has to be a balance between being able to deliver and sort of encouraging people to be skilled up. There's a lot that's coming through. I mean, we've currently got the procurement team. We've got 7 people going through the procurement apprenticeship, which is absolutely fantastic. There are apprenticeships that we're waiting to start. So we are constantly going through, and it's really important that teams, I think, understand that there are apprenticeships out there for people, and they don't necessarily have to take sort of people that meet all the experience or qualifications. And there are teams that also have looked at, so our internal audit, for example, have looked at the audit apprenticeships and have actually taken some vacancies and reduced those to be able to encourage apprenticeships to come in. So they've recruited apprenticeships to come in at a grade lower than a qualified auditor, and they would do their apprenticeship and then move into that post at the end of their apprenticeship program. So there is a change. I think it's just a massive shift for people to get their head around, to think of how to do this differently. But it is definitely something that sort of we need to consider. Our levy pot always sits at about 3 million, because obviously with the money coming in balances the money going out. So that's a huge amount of money that is sitting there, and a huge amount of money that we're losing every month that goes back to HMRC.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And sorry, Chair, if I just one on that point there to go across. So I know we talk about the money that's going to be going out to local businesses that applied. Have we also engaged with Bayer and ARC? Obviously, I imagine, especially with the nature of their role as well, which from the old traditional route of apprenticeships more than anything, to see what we can do with them as well in terms of supporting them through the levy. Because I completely understand what you're saying, and in terms of levy, I've got experience with apprenticeships myself in terms of taking them on and business, so I do know the cost involved. It just seems to me that perhaps needs to be more of a long-term strategic view of saying to departments, if they know they're going to retire in, say, 2 years or 18 months, I always say, right now, let's start recruiting apprentices. We may have to sort more funding, and that's for another committee to decide, so we can pass that up. But in terms of look at long-term planning, is it right now we identify we're going to need 40 people? That's based on what we known going to be vacancies, so to speak, and we start putting that method in now of recruiting those people and training and having the handover period, but obviously getting the experience those people are going to be leaving us. And I think that to me just sounds like, if it was me in charge of all of this, I'd be saying to the departments, right, give me those list of people, let's look at your financial shortfall, and then let's go cap in hand to Mr. Jackson and go, right, this is the money we need to sort this, but actually this is the benefit we're going to get the long term, because this is the money we're giving back to HMRC. I think you just need, like I say, and that'd be a point I'd make, Chairman, I think just perhaps need to look at this more that long term view, and again taking that pressure off Lindsay and Jill and the team as well, because obviously they're just implementing what we're saying as policy, and I'm sure they're relying on the department heads and the various departments to give this information as well. So I think what engagement we can do with those committees as well, Chairman.
Okay, right. I think on that one, I'll bring Jill in to that one. Jill?
Councillor Wheeler, it might be helpful to know that we do visit the departmental leadership teams on a regular basis to talk about workforce planning, including succession planning and the use of apprentices, graduates, and other resourcing requirements across the board. So that's a regular part of our dialogue with the departments. I think Lindsay's right. We need to shift in opinion about what an apprenticeship is and indeed what it isn't. And some departments have come to that quicker than others, but that's part of our ongoing dialogue. Things like social work apprentices, which I've been contacted by Steve Edwards again this morning to discuss further. When those come on stream, that will have a significant impact on the money that we're spending as well. And also, we have built in consideration of every post that goes out for recruitment can be considered as an apprenticeship, and that's part of the vacancy control process that requires sign off by service directors. So it's a collection of work that we undertake to deliver the message to departmental managers about the importance of apprentices being one of the strands how they can resource their future requirements.
Okay, is that okay, Councillor Wheeler?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, thank you, Chair. May I have a question later, but I appreciate you've got to go around everyone else first. I'll come back later on. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Woodhead.
Question's been answered, Chairman. Thank you.
Oh, brilliant. Jolly good. Well done. Sorry, Councillor Dobson, were you waving? No, right. Okay, well, just back to you very quickly, Councillor Wheeler, and I think that's all the speakers I have showing at the moment.
Yeah, sorry, Chairman. It was just again on just ARC and VIA. Sorry, I may have missed it in the answer. I do apologise if I did. Just wondering, in terms of those conversations that are happening at the corporate level, are we including those and obviously the other organisations we partner and own and have other interests in, so to speak?
Who wants, either Jill or Lindsay? Who wants to answer that?
I'm not aware of any conversations that we've had with ARC or VIA. I don't know if Jill wants to add anything to that.
I don't think we have had conversations with ARC or VIA. We do have conversations with Inspire.
Right.
Okay, thanks, Chair. Just maybe a recommendation that we are having those conversations, just because, like I say, I'm just sure that there might be opportunities there. But even if we just tick it off the list, if there isn't, so to speak.
We can certainly try to engage. We have tried to engage previously, but they have their own employment relationships because they're not our employees anymore. We don't always have the most traction in those conversations, but we can certainly try again.
Right. Okay, right. So I haven't got any other speakers indicating. So the recommendations, the 4 recommendations at the bottom of page 30, they are there before you. As before, are there anybody who wants to vote against those? I can't see anybody. Anybody wishes to abstain? And I can't see anybody there, so I will take it that that is unanimously everyone in favour. So thank you very much indeed for that, and let's hope, well, not hope, I'm sure the work of the apprenticeships will continue very successfully. Item 7, this relates to the workforce availability and the health and well-being. Jill.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Members, this report gives information on Q2 sickness absence information, but also, as per previous discussions, broadens it out into a wider discussion about workforce availability. Since the beginning of November, we've returned to daily reporting to corporate leadership team about workforce availability because we think it's important that senior officers have real-time information about the number of people who are in work and indeed the number of people who are either self-isolating who can work or shielding who can work from home, alongside people who are sick with COVID-related symptoms or indeed people who are off sick with other reasons and indeed who are on annual leave or any other kind of time off that is recorded in the council's BMS system. So and there's a whole suite of the usual appendices that give information around departmental performance, reasons for absence. Things of note are still the level of employees who continue to have no absence at all, which is around the 50% mark, as seen in apologies, the Appendix E, top of the page. So you can see the number of people who've had no days off sick, and then the sliding scale to where it increases to 28 days plus. That varies across departments, but it's significant to see that in children's, for example, they've increased to over 53% of their employees having had no sickness absence, which is, as I say, a significant improvement. We've also looked at a range of activity, and I've got some updates on previous discussions from around the flu vaccination campaign, but just to go through the performance and the workforce availability. At the time of writing this report, there was 86.45% of the council's workforce available to work. That figure includes schools. Now, I've just looked at today's figure, and the figure is around the 83.6% mark. That drop is because of the availability to people working in schools. We've got significantly more numbers of school-based employees self-isolating, and that's a picture that colleagues in children and families, particularly Mary and Clay, are keeping a daily eye on, and the issue about keeping schools open is of great importance. So I just wanted to say that figure, that 86.45, is a daily snapshot, and that changes clearly on a daily basis. Moving down to paragraph 4, the figure for Q2 in terms of employee absence on the rolling 12-month period has reduced from 9.55 days in Q1 to 8.96 days at the end of Q2. We've also, though, started reporting average figures with COVID-related sickness absence removed, and that makes an improvement in performance from 8.3 days in Q1 to 7.82 days at the end of Q2. We continue to advise managers to focus attention on managing sickness absence, supporting employees who are unwell or indeed who are at the point of returning to work. And that is replicated in paragraph 5, where we have had, unfortunately, 3 dismissals under the council's attendance management procedure, but also, again, 23 ill health retirements where people can access their full pension benefits by reason of permanent incapacity due to ill health. Not in the report, but because it's fairly hot off the press, we've been engaging with the University of Nottingham and Loughborough University to see about our involvement in a pilot exercise, which is looking specifically at supporting people to return to work, having had a period of absence due to mental health issues. We're not due to meet about that until the week after next, and clearly I will bring updates back to this committee because that seems an interesting area, and I know that the employee mental health and well-being is of significant interest to members of this committee. So just wanted to let you know that we continue to look for opportunities where we can broaden our knowledge and understanding and indeed support mechanisms. And another thing of significant interest, and Marge will come to in the final report today, around the work of the Workforce Resilience and Recovery Group. There is a particular strand around employee health and well-being. And what we're trying to do there is look at what individual departments are doing, not through an HR lens, but through the lens of an operational manager, to see if there's gaps in our provision, to see what works in some areas better than others. So that again will be an area that will refresh our action plan moving forward. And it's really positive that there's engagement from all the departments at various levels to input into that piece of work that's been led by Lucy Peel from Children and Families. We continue to work, although with reduced capacity from public health colleagues at the moment, around the links between the benefits of flexible working and attendance. And members will be interested to know that our current submission for time-wise accreditation is with external auditors being assessed at the moment, and we hope to bring a report to committee in January around the success, hopefully, of our submission for accreditation. And all these things, a bit like the equality standards, go towards building an image of an employer that is concerned for the well-being of its employees and wants to actively consider and implement initiatives that will make a real difference to their employees' working lives. Last time, and I think it was Councillor Wallace particularly who was interested in the staff flu vaccination campaign. I have got an update from public health colleagues here. They had identified over 3,500 frontline workers who had been eligible for a flu vaccination this year, which is an increased number from 2019, which was around the 2,800 mark. They determine eligible staff as being frontline workers who have regular face-to-face contact with vulnerable service users. There'd been a blended approach of offering clinics where people can go along and be vaccinated, as well as the voucher scheme that we've previously operated. They had offered 15 clinics at the time of writing the report, and over 900 staff have been vaccinated at those clinics. There was an issue with the voucher scheme because of the availability of the vaccine, and Boots had provided vouchers to staff. With the increase in demand across the population, Boots ended up closing their voucher scheme early, but agreed to honour the vouchers that had been purchased. So we did go ahead and purchase an additional 300 vouchers from another supplier, Healthy Performance, and that's now been increased to 500. We don't know in terms of the voucher scheme just how many have been redeemed until after the 31st of December. But we do know that there's been 900 plus vaccinations delivered on site, 500 Boots vouchers issued, 300 Healthy Performance vouchers issued, and the program's reopened with an additional 400 more on-site appointments available, and 200 further vouchers through the Healthy Performance scheme. So we're encouraging, and trade union colleagues are here and have agreed for their continued support of people being vaccinated as part of the winter flu programme. As I've mentioned earlier, members have always had a particular interest in mental health and well-being of employees, and I've copied here some of the information that we've recently published on the council's intranet, highlighting the International World Mental Health Day in October, links to the Mind website that has a fantastic array of tools and toolkits, videos, the time to change, encouraging people to talk through mental health issues, either with family members, with friends, or with trained professionals. We've recently just refreshed the employee health and wellbeing pages on the intranet to try and make the information there easier to access. And we have trained some additional mental health first aiders. through our self-managed groups. So we're currently doing a piece of review work to understand the level of contact and usage people have with both the mental health first aiders and also our workplace buddy scheme, to understand where people find it most helpful to get their support, because it is different for different people. We also used the Learning at Work platform to highlight some issues around employee health and well-being. But anecdotally, it does seem to be the case that with this second national lockdown, people are finding it that bit harder to keep going. So we're talking to trade union colleagues and departmental managers about how we can ensure that we maintain momentum and the good officers of all our employees to continue with their COVID response, and indeed colleagues who are continuing to keep the wheels on the bus turning through business as usual. So moving to the recommendations, we're seeking members' agreement to the continued work to deliver the identified actions in the Employee Health and Wellbeing Action Plan, and to any additions arising from the work stream of the Workforce Resilience and Recovery Group, and also to receive a further report in March 2021 regarding Q3 figures. I appreciate Q3 ends at the end of December, but the date of the meeting and with the Christmas and New Year break, it makes it very difficult to have all the figures collated in time for the 20th of January committee date. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed for that. And it is encouraging that the sickness level, apart or excluding COVID, has come down. Be interesting to see how much of that is influenced by working at home, and I'm sure that it's too early at the moment, but in the future it'll be interesting to see what are the effects, long-term effects and benefits and the disbenefits of working from home, and how this affects the way people work and the effects on the organisation. So that's a piece of work for the future, but it'd be interesting to see. We're in, I always refer to a crisis like this, it's almost like wartime. We're in a crisis situation, and things happen differently and move much faster and in a different way. So it'd be interesting to see, once things all settle down, how that affects sickness and the health and well-being of all our staff and everybody who works for us. Anybody have any questions, comments, or has that comprehensive report seems to have put you all quiet? So if there's nobody else, Councillor Dobson, hi there.
Thank you, Chairman. You might know if it's not Jonathan, it's me. But having said that, at the end of the day, another excellent report. Okay, it was written a bit before we decided to have a personnel committee, but I don't think everybody out here, and I'm not just referring to Collingham, Chairman, I'm referring out here metaphorically, out and about. The public do not realise what local government officers do. I don't think they have a clue. And, the amount of effort that's put in by all staff, and, some of them really do struggle, but they keep going. And I just don't think we can thank the staff enough. And we should be actually sending out. I know the leader probably does it, but I think it would be very nice if we as a committee could send out our messages on the intranet and say well done to everybody at the county council. It doesn't matter whereabouts in the organisation they work, and well done to them working at home. And also, please, as Jill has said, we've got to continue to think about people working at home. Some people get lonely. So the best thing to do, all of us collectively can pick the phone up and speak to people on the phone, speak to officers and just say, I'm a pain up the bum and I really don't want to ask you anything, but I'm going to just see if you're all right. And, you know, just have a chat with people, because that's what people need. So I'm expecting you, Gordon, to be talking to Jonathan, and I don't know who's going to speak to you, Mr. Business. What do you mean? No.
Yes, settle down.
You know, I speak to Yvonne, I see Yvonne and at other things, and I speak to Yvonne, and I just think we all ought to communicate, and that's what would be really good if everybody did that. But thank you to the staff. I really do think, Chairman, we ought to put that in.
Well, thank you for those comments, because that prompts wonderfully for me to use that as a prompt to say and to tell you just between you and I, Councillor Dobson, that I did actually send a message to Marie Rowney to circulate a message from me on behalf of the Personnel Committee to all the call centre staff, to thank them very much for all the work that they do, because you know, a lot you've identified a lot of people who work in the council are unseen by the public, and there are many people in the council who are unsung heroes. So I absolutely agree with you. They do need our support, and they do need to be aware that councillors are aware of their existence, even if they don't talk to them, you know, every single day, as you've indicated. So yes, I absolutely agree with your comments. I do also need to bring a motion of censure against you as well, because you do realise that you mentioning Councillor Jonathan Wheeler prompted him to raise his hand. So you know, you need to be very careful, Councillor Dobson.
Sorry, Chairman. But I didn't hear Jonathan.
Oh, crikey, steady on, steady. Right, and with that perfect Radio 2 link, Councillor Jonathan Wheeler.
Thank you, Chairman. First of all, I need to correct you. The only good thing about lockdown is I've excused not to talk to my old man. So that lockdown should continue just for that reason. But no, thank you for that. I think, thanks, Chairman. What I want to say is, first of all, I want to say is a thank you to, I think, all the staff who are volunteering to be mental health first aiders. I think what the report shows is that that role is becoming more prevalent when people are working from home or perhaps in an isolated situation. You can see how busy they are, and I think people put themselves forward to that role. We should really thank them and hope that all people are happy to put themselves forward to support people. Just a quick question, Jill, about holiday annual leave. I know you mentioned about obviously a lot more people like to take half term, which I can absolutely appreciate from their parents, especially with all the toing and fro of schools, perhaps sending people off and bringing them back again. Just to check, are we making sure that holiday is being taken sort of this calendar year? I'm not sure if we end holiday in December or if it's March of the financial year. Just sort of bring on your report about the productivity. Just I know that could have a knock-on effect to next year if we were to roll over holiday, which I know some businesses are, but just wanted to clarify what we're doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, the government introduced and passed some regulations in March of this year that allowed for the additional carryover of annual leave, statutory annual leave under Working Time Directive. So ordinarily people have got to take a minimum number of days. We have adopted an approach throughout of encouraging people to take annual leave, even in frontline services, as a mechanism of maintaining their resilience, their personal resilience, because even if they can't go away, and yes, people working at home need to be considered. That's about a third of our workforce. The remaining 2/3 are still out in communities delivering services. So for their personal resilience, and they need to take that time off because it's very intense. It's a very intense way of working. We're running reports just to check. We sort of break it down in how many people have taken 25%, 50%, 75%. The leave year runs from the 1st of April to the end of March. Managers are looking for us to give an arbitrary number of days that people can carry forward. We're not going to do that because we've got existing policies and procedures that say you can carry over up to 5 anyway with your line manager's agreement. Our expectation is that will be flexed more, but it will depend very much on which service that you work in, because clearly people in my team, whilst they do important work, I'd always want to approve their time off requests wherever possible. And I've said over Christmas, we'll operate a skeleton staff. You can't say that in a children's home or in re-enablement service. So it's horses for courses, but we're in the process of developing some further guidance to line managers to remind them about the need to encourage employees to take their time off on a regular basis, even if they can't necessarily go away on holiday or go out and about. It's still important to have that rest, but also we'll give them some guidance about carryover.
Yeah. Well done, Joe.
Yeah.
No, that's great. Thank you, Jill.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Butler did have his hand up. It's disappeared. Councillor Butler, do you?
I'm still here. I'm hanging on in there.
Right, over to you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, first of all, I want to associate myself with the comments that Councillor Dobson and yourself and others have made, that most people, our residents, do not know what council staff do. I'm bound to say as well, they don't understand what we members do either. But
well, that's one of life's little mysteries.
It is, but that's a little bit of self-interest there. But no, there's no doubt about it. The work that our staff are doing is not to be underestimated, as we discussed. And sometimes you feel like, well, on occasions I do tell people just what is being done, because I'm sure we're all experiencing calls coming in from people over matters which are important to them, but perhaps in the greater scheme of things, they need to understand that we are all in very difficult situation at the moment for obvious reasons. Anyway, my main reason for coming in on this item was because I am but a visitor to your committee, and it's very nice to be here. But as it happens, I'm standing in for Councillor Wallace, and you made reference to his interest in the flu vaccine taker. And I'm sure that he would be pleased, as I am pleased, to see the comment that says in paragraph 7 that we've had an incredible demand for staff vaccines this year. Because how many times over the years have we heard people say, whether they're staff or members of the public, oh, I don't want a flu vaccine because they're dangerous, it will give me flu and everything, because there's this myth that goes around about that. And we know that's not the case, but urban myth and understanding seems to be that a lot of people do still think that. But to see that more staff are actually applying for these vouchers is encouraging. It's a shame we have to have them, but that's the nature of the health and the impact the flu can have. And also, I think the authorities should give itself a little pat on the back for offering the vouchers and having a very straightforward way and facility for getting those vouchers in place. So that's my view, and I would imagine it would be Councillor Wallace's view as well, especially as he did take such an interest in it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Butler. That's another factor of investing in people. So that's excellent. Councillor Woodhead.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, I'm not so enthused about these flu jabs and what have you. I'm not a fan. I was advised by my doctor in September 2010 that I needed a flu jab. I went along and I had the flu jab. I also had a second jab. And I said, what's that for? She said, that's pneumonia, one for life, you won't need any more. I thought, oh, okay. By Christmas that year, I'd got pneumonia.
Yes,
I've had pneumonia 4 times. I've got a damaged lung and I'm left with asthma. So if they want me to have another jab, I'll donate it to somebody else. Thank you.
I hope it wasn't my fault.
Thank you for that.
I hope it wasn't my fault.
Thank you for that very detailed analysis of your health, Councillor. But let's not get into a debate about vaccines, etc. We need to concentrate on this item. But thank you for those comments anyway. Is there anybody else wishing to ask a question or comment? No. So The recommendations are on page 39. The 2 recommendations. As before, anybody against? No. Anybody abstaining? No. So I'll take that as unanimously all in favour. Thank you very much. And on to, and I realise time is getting on, agenda item 8, workforce resilience and recovery strategy. And I'll ask Marge Todd, please, to present this.
Okay. Hello, everybody.
Sorry, Chair. Sorry, Chair. If I can just, I'm really sorry, but I'm going to have to go because I've got another appointment at 12:30. I am really sorry to leave, but I do apologise.
All right. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you. Marge.
I was going to say I'll try and be brief. Okay, so the workforce resilience and recovery strategy, it started out as a piece of work we thought we needed to do about recovery from COVID. This was at the beginning of the summer. What quickly became apparent in the early autumn was we were back into response, and we realised what we needed to think about was actually the resilience and of our workforce longer term, both in response but as part of recovery. And why we wanted to develop this was we wanted to focus in. We've got a people strategy, but we thought we needed to focus in on the things that we'd learned from COVID. So things like working from home. Before that, not many people work from home. Overnight, massive numbers of people had to work from home. What was good about that? What was less good about that? We wanted to build on and capture what we were doing before COVID, because we were conscious we were in danger of losing some of the really good things, like the mental health first aiders, coaching, leadership development. So we wanted to build on that, learn from COVID, but then we wanted to use what we've trying to use this for is to make our workforce sustainable and our resilient, and our organisation resilient, because obviously an organisation is as resilient as its workforce. So we've had to shift the focus already in respect of this strategy, and we want to keep it flexible and iterative. So we've set out the principles and some themes, which you can see in the report. So looking at our culture, looking at our leadership, people, health and well-being, we've talked a lot about there, and smarter working from home. What we've prioritised to focus on once, because it's quite a comprehensive strategy, there's a lot in there, is we want to focus, one of the first areas we're looking at, and Jill's touched on this, is well-being and resilience. That's a key issue for us. So looking at the provision we've already got, are there gaps? Do we need to promote it and rebrand that for people to encourage take-up? Do we need to do another? If you remember, we did a wellbeing survey sort of May, June time. Do we need to do another one, or do we need to do other more detailed focus groups to drill into raised about communication and engagement? It's never been more important to communicate and engage with our staff, and to put some of the softer things in there about how people keep in touch, how do they, what technology they use, some of those other bits. So we want a more rounded package to support people working from home. And then also looking at leadership development and personal development. Again, we've got a lot of provision there, but reviewing that and maybe rebranding that, and looking to hopefully, when we're coming through the other side of this, training and things we might want to launch in next year to take that further. So we've got a lot of things on. We've created a what I think is different this time, and what I'm quite gives me a lot of assurance and makes me quite enthusiastic about this, is we've created a cross-council working group so we can look at what's already happening in departments, look at all the work we're doing corporately, but encourage and bring that together. So some of the work and those priority areas for action that I've set out there is being led by colleagues from departments, and that's really good because we get better ownership and better engagement if we do that. Jill mentioned that someone from Children's is leading on the well-being and the organisational resilience. So work in progress, very much starting it. We need to carry on, take us through till this time next year. I would make the point, that obviously people were doing this work while responding to a pandemic, so we need to be cognizant of that. But the other bit of context I just set it in is all the work we're doing about equality, diversity, inclusion, mental health and well-being, all of that. All those other things are still ongoing as well, and it's trying to join them all up and pull them all together. So that was all I was going to say, Chairman, and by way of introduction.
Great, lovely. Thanks indeed very much for that, Marge. So do we have any questions or comments? Yeah, Councillor Dobson.
Just to say well done, Marge, and to the team and your group. I like the idea that you've included right across the authority all sorts of different people, because just because you're a manager doesn't mean you know it all. Just because you're a chief executive doesn't mean you know it all. Forgive
Pass
me.
that on.
But what I mean is lots of these young people and lots of the other people that have worked in certain departments for a long time have really valuable, interesting things to say. Yeah. And, you know, you think to yourself, oh, I hadn't thought about that. Why haven't we done that? So I really do appreciate this. I'm about to dismantle this report. I'm going to put it in a file and it's going to be kept for me. The rest can come back for recycling, but this is going to be kept because I think I need to read this through. And if I want to pass comment, I'll come back to you, Marge.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah.
But thank you, Chairman.
Thank you.
Great, thanks for that. And I'll get Marge to send the Chief Executive a memo in due course. Right, anybody else wish to make any comment or questions? No, I'm not seeing anybody. So, sorry, Councillor Woodhead. Sorry, you just come in before the bell went.
Thank you, Chairman. Dear, I'm getting a bit horsey. While we're doing this workforce resilient action plan, are we looking at the green agenda with some of these things, for jobs and energy and that sort of thing within this plan? Or is that coming under something else?
I think that's, we've got a wider approach to green issues and becoming carbon neutral, haven't we, as a council? Obviously there is an impact in respect of there's less travel. We've seen that in our travel budgets because I'm not travelling into work and I'm not travelling out to visit people. Just use me as an example, travelling out to visit people. So it's a sort of a byproduct as opposed to this being designed in order to deliver it. But we have noticed a benefit. Things like buildings, obviously we haven't had to have all our buildings open or open as much as we have before. So I think there is a byproduct, like word I'd use would be a byproduct of some of how we've been working has improved things from a green perspective.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Good. Thank you very much indeed. Anybody else? No. Okay. In which case, the recommendations are at the top of page 60. 2 recommendations. As in the usual manner. Anybody against? No. Anybody abstaining? Nope. Okay, that's great. So I'm going to take it that everybody is unanimously in favour. So thank you very much indeed for that. And on to the final item. Item 9, the work programme. Marge, I think, are you doing this?
Yeah, okay, so there's just a couple of additions to the work programme that we've already talked about. So one is to add into the programme for January, the graduates, something on the graduates and Kickstart programme. And then the other item that the chairman's asked me to add in is to the March programme. We're going to ask the customer service centre to come along and to give you an update of some of the things and the work they've been doing, because they've been absolutely in the front line of the council and indeed Nottinghamshire's response, because they've worked on behalf of the whole of the local resilience forum for Nottinghamshire. So I thought that would be interesting for you to know some of the things they've been doing and what they've learned. And I know there's some funny stories in there as well as some serious stories. So hopefully it'll be interesting. That's it. Thank you.
Brilliant. Lovely. Thank you for that. Anything to add? Anybody? No, I think it's fine. So everybody in favour of that? Everybody okay with that? I'll take general nods and things as Unanimous. Okay, great. That brings us to the end of the committee. Thank you very much indeed for your attendance. Thank you very much for anybody watching on the YouTube live stream. I hope it has been interesting. And really, it's a question. I hope everybody can carry on the good work in the council and that we can stay safe and stay well, hopefully. So with that, thank you very much indeed, everybody, and I'll bid you a good day. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Chairman.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everybody.